Hi, welcome to Med Madness. So, in this interesting session, we are going to discuss how the nerves regulate the blood pressure. When talking about the blood flow, it is mainly regulated in three ways. One is local metabolites production, for example, oxygen, carbon dioxide, hydrogen ions, nitric oxide, adenosine. These can regulate the flow in a local region, in the particular region. And number two is your nerves. The nerves can regulate the blood pressure in a fraction of a second. Okay, we are going to talk about that in today's session. And number three is a long-term regulation of blood pressure, that is your hormones, renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system that involved in regulation of blood pressure in a long term, because since it is hormone, it takes time. Okay, in today's topic we are going to cover the entire a full session about the baroreceptors. Take notes. Okay, and when talking about the baroreceptors, baro means pressure and receptors. What is the type of receptors present here? Free nerve ending. So nerve endings. Okay, so the baroreceptor, it senses pressure. It is a free nerve ending. Where it is situated, this is very important point. In the large blood vessels of your neck and thorax region, the baroreceptors can be found. Very important, two locations, that is your internal carotid artery and in the aortic arch. Okay, see here, so this is your common carotid artery, and this is your external carotid artery, internal. This is your external and internal, and here is a bifurcation point. So here the common carotid artery divides into external and internal. So in the internal carotid artery, that is above the bifurcation, the internal carotid artery has a small dilatation, a small bulge, so like this. So this is the carotid sinus, and this carotid sinus has the free nerve endings, that is the baroreceptors. Very important location. And here the ninth nerve, that is the glossopharyngeal nerve, takes the impulses to the brain. The glossopharyngeal nerve, the branch of, what is a branch of glossopharyngeal nerve that innervates the baroreceptors? It is Hering's nerve. And from the arch of aorta, your 10th nerve takes the impulses to the brain. Very simple, right? So to summarize, so the baroreceptors or the free nerve endings that is mainly present in the carotid sinus and aortic arch. The 9th nerve innervates the carotid sinus, and the 10th nerve innervates the aortic arch. So the 9th nerve and 10th nerve goes to the medulla. There is a very important portion of medulla, the nucleus tractus solitarius, because this nucleus tractus solitarius receives the sensory signals and going to decide whether to activate the sympathetic or the parasympathetic, or to inhibit sympathetic or parasympathetic. So the nucleus tractus solitarius is going to decide and bring back the blood pressure to normal. For example, say our mean blood pressure is 100. Okay, our mean blood pressure is 100. If this increases over, for example, 110, this baroreceptors can bring back the 110 to 100. Or if it goes to, for example, 90 or 95, this can bring back to 100 within fraction of the seconds. Who does this? The nucleus tractus solitarius. The nucleus tractus solitarius is going to inhibit or stimulate the sympathetic or parasympathetic. Okay, now I'm going to introduce some new terms here. What is a sympathetic center that is present in medulla? What is sympathetic center name? The name is vasomotor center. Vasomotor center. So this is sympathetic center which is present in medulla. The parasympathetic center is present in two nucleus. One is nucleus ambiguous and other is a dorsal motor nucleus. Okay, so you already know that the parasympathetic function is carried out by the vagus nerve, and the sympathetic nerves. So sympathetic nerves and vagus nerves going to carry out the sympathetic and parasympathetic functions. Okay, now two more important terms. This vasomotor center, very important center that carries out the sympathetic function, has two main parts. One is in the rostrum. Rostrum means upper part, in the ventral and lateral. Ventral means in front, lateral. So ventral, lateral, in the upper portion, that is the rostrum, you have this portion of vasomotor center that stimulates your sympathetic system, sympathetic nervous system. It's going to stimulate the sympathetic nervous system. And the caudal lower portion, ventral lateral part of vasomotor center, this is going to inhibit your sympathetic system. Is it confusing? Come on, let's do it. Okay, so the vasomotor center is a sympathetic area, sympathetic center. One part, that is in the rostrum ventral lateral, RVLM, rostral ventrolateral medulla, this is going to stimulate the sympathetic system. The other portion, that is a lower portion of vasomotor center, the caudal ventral lateral, that is CVLM, that is going to inhibit your sympathetic system. So this is the vasomotor center. And the parasympathetic through the vagus nerve is going to perform the parasympathetic functions. Now let us discuss a small overview about the sympathetic and parasympathetic system. A small overview, because very big topic, will deal with ANS in a separate session. And now, okay, first talking about the sympathetic system. What are the sympathetic receptors, you know? For example, alpha 1, alpha 2, beta 1, beta 2, beta 3. So these are all the sympathetic receptors. In the heart, what are the sympathetic receptors present? Beta 1. Remember, one heart, 2 lungs. Beta 1 is present in the heart and beta 2 is present in the lungs. Beta 1 is in the heart. That is going to increase the heart rate. What are the two other regions? One, in the blood vessels, you have alpha 1 receptors. Alpha 1 receptor, which is present in the blood vessels, is going to vasoconstrict, so that the total peripheral resistance increases. That is, resistance increases, bringing back the blood pressure to normal. And never forget about the adrenal medulla that secretes norepinephrine, epinephrine into the circulation. That is going to increase your total peripheral resistance and heart rate. That increases the blood pressure. This is sympathetic system. Sympathetic system, when activated, increases the blood pressure and heart rate. Okay, now about the parasympathetic. The parasympathetic receptors, you know, muscarinic and nicotinic. Muscarinic, M1, M2, M3, and so many receptors. And M2 is present in the heart. M2 is going to decrease your heart rate. M2 is going to decrease your heart rate. And M3 present in the endothelial cells of a blood vessel is going to vasodilate and decrease the total peripheral resistance, thereby decreasing your blood pressure. Keep this overview in the back of our mind. Okay, now we will discuss some situations where you can see decreased blood pressure or increased blood pressure, how the blood baroreceptors bring back to normal. We are going to discuss a flow chart. And before going to that, always note that the baroreceptors impulse, there is baroreceptor firing, is always sending the report to medulla. It always fires. The baroreceptors always fire, sending the impulses to medulla. If there is increase in the afferent impulses, that means there is increased blood pressure. If there is decreased impulses, that means decreased blood pressure. There is a range of blood pressure where the baroreceptors functions. Okay, so above 60 millimeter mercury. Remember, this is very important, because when doing experiments, we have observed that this baroreceptors functions above 60 millimeter mercury. So above 60 millimeter mercury, this baroreceptor can function. Up to 180 millimeter mercury, this baroreceptor can function very well. So between these blood pressure change, the baroreceptors can function effectively. Okay, now we'll go to the chart where I'm going to give you some situation. Okay, now in the situation, you have increased blood pressure in the body. That is, the blood pressure goes up. Okay, for example, the cardiac output is going up. Let us imagine like that. When cardiac output goes up, the internal carotid artery and aortic arch is going to stretch. So the baroreceptor is going to is like a stretch receptors, right? I will write it down. Stretch receptors. So this stretch is sensed by the baroreceptors, and there is increased afferent impulses from baroreceptors. There is increased afferent impulses from the baroreceptors that is taken to the medulla, that excites your nucleus tractus solitarius. That is going to excite your nucleus tractus solitarius. Okay, so the nucleus tractus solitarius is excited. Remember, just two more points, very important point, that nucleus tractus solitarius releases glutamate. For example, this is the nerve ending and this is the other nerve ending, and this is from nucleus tractus solitarius. Okay, so this releases glutamate. Glutamate is an excitatory neurotransmitter because it opens up sodium and calcium channels. Sodium and calcium, when enters into the cell, it can excite the cells, the depolarize the cell and activate the other cell. Okay, and always remember, GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter that opens up the chloride channel. When chloride enters, the negative ions enters into the cell, is going to inhibit the cell. Okay, so the nucleus tractus solitarius, when releasing glutamate, so this releases glutamate that excites your caudal. Remember, caudal is an inhibitory sympathetic center and also stimulates your parasympathetic center. Okay, once again, so when there is the increased blood pressure, there is increased afferent impulses that excites your nucleus tractus solitarius. That nucleus tractus solitarius is going to release glutamate. Glutamate is excitatory. So the parasympathetic is going to get stimulated and the caudal ventrolateral medulla, that is the inhibitory sympathetic system, is going to get stimulated. One more point here. This caudal ventrolateral medulla releases GABA, that is inhibitory neurotransmitter, to RVLM, rostral ventrolateral medulla, that is a stimulatory sympathetic system. Now you have to note one point. When GABA is released on RVLM, this is going to inhibit again. Okay, so nucleus tractus solitarius, that stimulate glutamate, so that stimulates your CVLM, that is going to inhibit the sympathetic system, that releases GABA. So this releases GABA. The GABA is going to inhibit the coming cell, that is inhibit the RVLM. So overall, the parasympathetic is stimulated, which decreases the heart rate and decreases the total peripheral resistance, and the CVLM, this caudal ventrolateral medulla, is going to get stimulated, that is going to inhibit your sympathetic system, that is increases heart rate and increases, this is inhibited. What is the result? Decrease in blood pressure. Clear? So when the blood pressure goes up, the baroreceptor sends impulses to nucleus tractus solitarius. This nucleus tractus solitarius is going to stimulate the CVLM and the parasympathetic, that brings back the pressure to normal. Very easy, right? Okay, now the reverse. For example, there is decrease in blood pressure. You are waking up in the morning, 6 a.m. boom, you are waking up and the blood pools in the veins, right? The blood pools in the veins because of gravity, and your blood pressure goes low. So your baroreceptors, there is decreased afferent impulses from the baroreceptors reaching the medulla. So decrease in the excitement of nucleus tractus solitarius, release of glutamate decreases. Release of glutamate decreases, your parasympathetic is inhibited, your caudal ventrolateral medulla is inhibited. What happens now? So when CVLM is inhibited, there is decrease in the release of GABA. Now it is very clear. The RVLM gets excited. Why? Because there is no inhibitory neurotransmitter. GABA, there is no inhibitory neurotransmitter. So the RVLM gets excited. Thus sympathetic activation that increases your heart rate and total peripheral resistance, and decreased parasympathetic impulses, bringing back the blood pressure to normal. Very simple, right? So when you wake up next day in the morning, you have to observe your heart rate. When you wake up in the morning, your heart rate beats fast. It beats fast, so as to maintain the blood pressure, and your blood vessel squeezes. Blood vessel squeezes improves the forward flow increasing the blood pressure, because your brain needs blood pressure because it is against the gravity, right? Our brain badly needs blood. So blood pressure is very important, it should be regulated. This is baroreceptors. So the baroreceptors, I mean the nervous regulation, can regulate the blood pressure within fraction of seconds. When you talk about the renin angiotensin nervous system, the hormone release, it takes time, maybe days, it takes time for its action, but the nervous, fraction of seconds. Okay, overview, we are at the end of a class. Okay, so now the baroreceptors, for example, if there is decreased blood pressure, decreased stretch of a baroreceptors, the decrease in the afferent impulses going to the medulla, that activates your sympathetic nervous system. It increased heart rate, increased total peripheral resistance, bringing back the blood pressure to normal within fraction of seconds. Number 2, when there is increased blood pressure, increased afferent impulses going to the medulla, increases the excitement of nucleus tractus solitarius, that excites your parasympathetic nervous system, that decreases the heart rate and decreases total peripheral resistance and inhibits your sympathetic system, bringing back the blood pressure to normal. Very clear, right? See you with more interesting videos in next session.